The building industry can bring you to your knees. Everyone knows what the market's facing right now.
Previously, if Mark would come home and say, oh, this happened, you'd kind of be like, oh,
I think there comes a point where you actually need to just do a bit of work inside of yourself. I wanted to fast track where I wanted to be.
A switch went on inside Mark, and Mark just started consuming and changing and evolving.
The industry is going through what I would say as a lot of pressure right now. You need to be doing things to get in front of other people.
Mark, Maddie, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. Really excited to be chatting with you. And Mark, thanks for taking me out for a run this morning.
Pleasure to be here,
That was good
mate.
fun. Yeah, let's jump into a bit of a backstory. So those of our listeners who are watching or listening to this, or your guys, your prospective clients or clients that are going to be listening to this, can get to know you guys more. Mark, Freedom Built, why did you start it and when did you start it?
Yeah, so we started Freedom about 5 years ago now. Prior to that, I just went through the standard do a trade. I did carpentry and I worked my way into business straight away, but as a contractor to builders.
What did that look like?
I think I got a really good insight of a lot of things that I didn't like about what builders were doing and cutting corners and things like that. And also I got to see quite a lot client side of things when they would come to site and there was a lot of disappointment sometimes, and they'll be like, and you feel like just as you only obviously do one aspect of that, and you feel disappointment for them sometimes because you know that process could have been done better. And you know that like sometimes they'd come and they'd be like, oh, this is over a year now and we've only just got a roof on. So you can see the stress on their faces sometimes, just going, most of the time, if they're doing a complete knockdown rebuild or a high level extension reno, they're renting somewhere. So not only have they got the pressures that they're having to pay for a build, but they've also got the pressures of renting somewhere and sort of not knowing how long that's going to take. And everyone knows with the rental market, sometimes you can't just get month by month. Like it doesn't work like that. So trying to plan around that, and then most of the time our target audience is growing families. So navigating schools and everything around that is difficult. So I got a good snapshot of what I didn't want to do and what I really wanted to push towards once I got into business. And yeah, we've been going for about 5 years now as a building company. And I think like we've hit a bit of a milestone with that, because I feel like there's a stat where it's like 1 in every 15 businesses make it through 5 years. So we were pretty stoked that as a newer company, we've put some really good systems and processes in place.
And you guys have some great momentum. It's not like you've just survived. You guys have great momentum and building.
That's right. Yeah. So, we moved into the building space. And over the last couple of years, and also with the help of you guys, we've honed in on what our niche is, being knockdowns, rebuilds, extensions and renovations on a higher end. I feel like when we first started, it was just like take any job that comes, and that was a little bit confusing. And I think, with the help of when we first jumped on board and the story development, we really honed in on exactly what we wanted to be doing, what we get a real kick out of. And then I feel like the rest just lets itself happen. Like it's when you do exactly what you want, and you just repetition, it gets easy and more enjoyable along the way.
Well, I'm keen to jump in more of that understanding, that shift from kind of taking on anything versus understanding and knowing what your niche is and then honing in on that. But Maddie, you become a really big part of the team now. Give us a bit of a snapshot and backstory as to where you've come from and sort of the assets and skill set you've brought to the Freedom Built team.
Yeah, so I've been in the construction industry for about 7 years now. So pretty much my first or second job out of school. So I started working firstly with a commercial fit-out builder. So I was with them for 6 years doing project management work. And then I moved on to working client side, still in the commercial space. So I was working on government infrastructure projects. and then moved over to the team about 6 months ago. So into the residential world, which is while the role's very relatable, it's an adjustment to get used to the residential world as well. But
I think one thing we were talking about just before the camera started rolling was that unique skill set of having worked both, one commercial, but then both builder side and client side.
Yeah.
And now combining all that and bringing it to the team.
Yeah.
Just being able to reflect and resonate more with the clients that you guys are helping.
Yeah, 100%. And definitely being in residential side, it's a lot more personable with the client. Like in my previous roles, you're working for, it's not their home that they're building. Like it's an office or it's So there's a lot more emotional investment involved, which I like that side of it. You can kind of get, really on the personal level with the client.
That's something I both really like about both of you. Is while it would be very understandable and very natural to go down the logical side of building, you guys, and Mark, whenever we interact, just that continual emphasis on, no, it's about the client, and even hearing what you said there earlier about what you saw you liked and didn't like and what you were going to take away and put in place and not put in place from previous experiences.
Yep.
It was all around the client.
Yep.
How are they experiencing? How are they feeling? I think that says a lot. And from our perspective, when we're working with builders, that's little things like that. Those are like little 1%ers that put guys like you ahead of others. But going back to StoryDev, you guys are up here for one podcast, so thank you for coming on, but also for story development session with us. And this is not the first time you guys have done StoryDev. Talk us through. 3 years ago, I think we just said
3 years ago.
3 years ago, you did story development. Team was a bit smaller. You went through it yourself. Talk us through that process then and what you got out of it then.
Yeah, so I suppose it's just ultimately getting clear on the direction. I feel like when I first started and before we did the first story development, you always have a bit of a goal in mind, but it's crazy to think that I would have thought that I could get there without actually putting steps in place and actually like outlining what I wanted to do, who we wanted to service, and how we're going to get there. And I just feel like once you sort of hone in on exactly that type of demographic or audience, and you really just focus on that, and I feel like now our knowledge around exactly what, like it's easy to say it, you can't be all over everything, like is a short sense of it. So being able to have our niche and just completely focus on that, and just try and find out absolutely every bit of information about, one, not only the building, two, like setbacks and things like that, and what conditions we can work with on a block, and then three, just focus on our customers really. So once we figured out that, I feel like I can speak about it for days now. But I feel like if I was trying to do too many things and wear too many hats and service too many different things, I feel like our service would just drop there. So getting familiar with that story development from the very start, I was like, how did I ever think I was going to get to this next stage if I didn't first iron out these first things? So
yeah, that's a good point you raised there. I think a lot of guys, they have that sort of goal, or they think they have that goal in mind, and then you think, whatever you do, you think that you're working towards it.
Yeah.
But then, as you say, to nut it out and be like, okay, well, hang on a sec, if that's the goal, reverse engineering it.
Yeah. And at the start, it was hard because I'd have people come to me, and I'll just give an example of like a first home buyer. And that's not where our niche is at, because we can't compete with volume builders and things like that. But just even when we first started, when you get an inquiry, like it's exciting, but then to say, sorry, I think it'd be best suited if you went to this person. It's just not how we're structured to do things. Like that was always hard, because I was like, you feel like sometimes you're potentially, throwing money off the table, or you feel like you really want to service these people because sometimes you know them, or it's of a friend of a friend. So at the start, that was hard for us. But I suppose in the long run, that's our niche is our niche. And when you start to venture outside of that, sometimes you could possibly disappoint people. I think saying no is powerful sometimes, as hard as it is.
Yeah, and I think as well, the more you kind of lean into that niche, you start to only really get the inquiries that match that niche because your portfolio matches what your niche is.
You're trying to attract.
Yeah.
It's like the guys who will tell us, I want this sort of work. And it's like, okay, but your socials, your imagery, everything is very different.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you've seen that, but there's a discrepancy there. Maddie, the first time that Mark went through story development, you weren't yet part of the team.
No.
Do you remember seeing a shift in that from what he was doing prior to going through that and the clarity that came from that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it was a huge milestone for the business and a huge kind of turning point. Yeah.
It was also, I think, at the time when I did the first one, I was actually on the tools still. And like I said before, you just can't wear too many hats. So I prioritized focusing on direction of where we wanted to be and where we wanted to go. And that meant that I had to take a step back, which over 10 years of being outside every day and working on the tools in the sun, like that was a hard step for me to make. But looking at it, and I always almost felt like a bit of a disappointment to my crew and things like that, because I'd be like, oh, I'm going to do this.
I've heard that a bit, and from guys trying to make that transition, especially when you feel like, man, that's where I'm most effective. That's where I'm good. That's where I'm competent.
Yeah.
And especially, I'm going to jump into some of the mindset and personal development you guys have done over the last little while. But that's hard. You know, that ego, everyone's got that bit of ego inside, and it's like that feedback loop. If I go out there and I'm effective on site, I can feel good, you know, but that's not.
And you can also track that, like money wise, like when you're like, I've just stood a frame, I've made this amount of money.
Yeah.
When you're in the office,
physical, the structure.
Yeah, that's right. The sense of achievement. But like when you become an overhead of the business, it's like, how do you track that? How do you know if you've had a good day?
I've sent some emails. I've written up some contracts. Yeah. How do you measure that?
But everyone says like, you make more money when you come off the tools, and that's huge. It's so true. It's hard to hear, but it's so true.
Yeah, definitely. And then I'll come back to personal development because I am keen to hear more about that. Second, story development. You guys just went through it again this last week, and there's the online sort of modules. There's the vision, which would be for you guys, or you guys went through that, and then there's the team module, the team exercise. What was it like for the two of you to go through that now, the vision side?
For me, it was really nice to have the support around me now. When we did the first one, it was, even though you weren't working within the business, you actually still had an input in it, but it's nice to have you like completely on board now, and just have the support and get the ideas of everyone, because it's all, I suppose, well and good for us to sit back now in the office and have an idea of what we do, but each of our employees has their individual flair, and there's probably things that we don't even know they bring to the table sometimes. So I think it was super good to hear, and the feedback we had from everyone was amazing. And
everyone got like really into it, which I thought was amazing, because like, you know, typically like tradies on site, like they wouldn't really be interested in, you know, the fluffy kind of
Sitting
stuff.
around a table and talking about
fluff. Yeah.
But that's definitely a false belief.
It is a false belief,
big
time. Because they were really into it. They had like great suggestions. Like, it was awesome.
And we made a point also not to even look at our story dev that we did 3 years ago, just because I feel like we've evolved so much as a business that we just wanted it to be completely fresh.
I really like that. I think you mentioned that to me on the run this morning, and I thought that was a great idea, because had you put that in your heads,
you just think of the same.
And it could potentially just anchor that plane that's trying to take off and shift that trajectory of where are we going with this, and how far can we take it. You know, sometimes it's as simple as someone else, and I've heard this from someone else who went through some big personal growth and business growth, and when they were originally planned out some of their goals, they were working with someone else to help them do that, and they set this goal, and they were like, oh man, I'm not really sure, you know, and they said to this person that was helping them, you know, do you think we could hit that? And they're like, I'd be disappointed if you didn't.
And
just that confidence was like, oh, what? And then that just left lifted the cap from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I find so funny, because when I did that story development 3 years ago, and you set a 5-year plan of like, and you talk in like
Present tense.
Present tense,
Yeah.
like you've done
you're
it.
there and
Yeah.
you've done it. And like some of the goals that I set myself, like I was generally sitting there writing it thinking there's no way I'm going to achieve this. And we set a goal for 5 years and I think we reached it in 18 months. So like, and that's when I got
Well
into
done.
you and I was just like, it's hit, it's worked. It's
Yeah.
like we're there. And then it's like, we've got to do this again now.
Yeah.
Like,
That's incredible. Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Sure. Wow. Okay. Well, going back, because you were working with us that first time, and then you did some work with Kurt.
Yep.
But you also, it was like a switch went on inside Mark, and Mark just started consuming and changing and evolving. And what were some of the things that you found were really helpful to consume?
Yep.
And how is Mark today different to Mark back then?
I think I'm just more confident in myself is a big one. I am definitely an overthinker. So I'm always constantly analysing things and trying to do better. But I think the building industry can bring you to your knees sometimes. And my biggest thing, at the start I was chasing like business coaching and read this book, read that book. You can do that as much as you can, but I think there comes a point where you actually need to just do a bit of work inside of yourself personally. Otherwise, you just won't absorb that information. So yeah, stress management was the biggest one for me. So that meant just taking time out whenever I could and really trying to look after myself. So really focusing on my sleep, really focusing on bringing cortisol levels down, mindfulness, gratefulness. And I've sent you one of the
you did.
best
And
things journals that I've had. And
I'm loving it. It's having an impact on me and my family. So thank you.
Yeah. And so being an overthinker, and sometimes you get a message or something from a subby or at 7 o'clock at night and you can't switch off after that. So the journal is literally 5 or 6 questions and you do it right before you go to bed. And I just feel like getting whatever's in here out on paper, your sleep dramatically improves. And
100%.
you just, I started dreaming and everything. And I was like,
He's
wow.
never dreamed before.
So that was probably the biggest one for me that I got a benefit out of. Trying, and I even found once you start to manage your stress, even my body felt better. So like you can work longer, you can do more things. You're not constantly sort of, there was a point where I felt almost run down. Like I was trying to do so many things, but I just neglected myself. And now I feel like I'm so much more powerful and valued to my employees, my clients, because I looked after the number one, and that was myself.
Yeah.
And we're also better as a couple as well for that. So
You guys are getting married this year.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. So exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're excited, and we've booked it so far in advance, and now we feel like it's like a click of a fingers away. So.
Yeah, that is crazy how time can fly. Always.
Yeah, it
whenever
really
you,
does.
And it can almost at the same time feel far away at the same, but also feel there tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I suppose on that, like when we were a bit worried about that with getting into business for a little bit, because like we've obviously got so much things at work and then obviously a relationship as well. But once Maddie come on board, I honestly felt like it took our relationship to the next level. I feel like some stories you hear of people, like it can go two ways, but I honestly feel like the understanding we have of each other now, like personally, is like so much better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think because, I mean, Maddie, you and I don't really know each other as much as Mark and I know each other.
Yeah.
But when Mark and I talk about business and stuff, I think, man, and I would imagine that for so many of our builders, there's that side, the way your mindset works, the way you've shifted considerably with your mindset, and problem comes up and you definitely take on that mindset now of a problem equals opportunity. Where's the opportunity in this? And often I think if that's you in business, but you leave business at the office, let's say, and then you go home, potentially there's that whole great side of you and other builders that their partner doesn't see.
Yeah.
And vice versa, Maddie, in terms of bringing your skill set, your problem solving. So I can definitely appreciate that comment. And I think that is just excellent to hear.
Yeah. 100%. And I think the level of communication we have, it's like we're, you know what I mean, so intertwined with each other that it always actually even improves like what's happening on site, because we don't even have to speak to each other because we know exactly where some things are. So
and it's kind of a different level of understanding as well. Like previously, if Mark would come home and say, oh, this happened, you'd kind of be like, oh, that sucks. But you don't really understand what, like the level
what
of...
goes into it, the complexity of it. Yeah.
So now you when we both know like the problems that we face, and we can actually really empathize with each other like on a deeper level, which I think is...
And have the accountability to say, okay, that day didn't go too well.
Yeah.
Let's go for a walk and let's just detach completely and then reset. It's having that drive where sometimes you can spiral, and like that's where I used to be sometimes, where stress used to hit me. So having that guide, it's good.
The one thing I want to touch on some conversations we've had outside of this podcast, and that is where you guys bring a lot of value to your clients. Without me putting words in your mouth, there's a lot that you guys offer that so often people don't yet know about until they start engaging and working with you. So hopefully people are going to listen to this that are looking to work with you and stuff like that. But what does that look like? Like, how early can someone start talking to you and start engaging with Freedom Built for help on the journey of building their home?
Yeah, I feel like there's a common misconception that like you shouldn't engage your builder until you've got your design done and like you're ready to build. Yeah. But for us, we like to be involved like literally as soon as you're thinking about building, because we can go through with clients like on the design journey and we can give them, like cost saving alternatives like as we go along, because too often we get a set of plans and they say, well, here's our plans and this is our budget. And we're like, well, this is totally
those two don't match.
Out of your budget. So we need, and then they've got to go back to the architect and spend more money in getting the plans changed. So
on that note, for those listening, I know it's a big challenge we're hearing a lot of at the moment. People with that false belief going to an architect or a designer and saying, this is what we want, it getting designed, it's beautiful, but spec'd way too high, and then going to a builder and the builder looks like the bad guy.
That's right.
Because it's like, well, based on what you've given me, I'm pricing it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't match. Why do you think that's happening? What are maybe some of the obstacles there causing that discrepancy between?
I feel like in some cases it's just not knowing the client's deep desires and needs from the very start. And that can, some conversations we have, the client, the designer hasn't even mentioned what the budget is. Okay. So they're designing everything they want and need, which in a perfect world, you'd have that if you could.
For sure, yeah.
But then sometimes, then when it gets back to us, then it's like, it's super hard for them to have their sights set on something that's been designed and then pair that back. There's just so much disappointment with that. And then some people are just like, okay, it just feels like too much and there's too much of a separation that they don't.
It all just feels too hard.
And I think there's a crazy stat now of plans that actually get designed, like 70% of them don't actually make it through to actually building. Which is just like, you can imagine the money and time and effort just spent with that, and then it doesn't even get to the builder.
And I think a lot of it as well is like a distrust from like just the general public in builders. A lot of people just think, oh, dodgy builders, they're just saying that because they want to try and make more money or something like that. But it's just a misconception about the industry really, which is unfortunate.
100%.
So let's say someone does come to you, either they can come to you first, and then you can help them or partner them with a designer that's a good fit for them.
That's right.
Or if they're already with an architect or a designer, they can still come talk to you and just bring you on collaboratively.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
And we even have clients now that they don't even have a block secured, and they'll send us the link to the house that they're looking at buying. And I suppose a big driver for us, and I think what our point of difference is we're not only trying to create like a beautiful home and exactly what the client's after, but we're also trying to create a healthier home. So if we can find the right block, which is situated so it has the right sun in the right times of the day, and we can sort of almost keep that house off grid. So a passively designed house where we don't have to be running air conditioners flat out and everything like that all through the day just to keep that
For those listening who don't yet know a lot about the passive space, can you give us a bit of a breakdown in terms of what is a passive house, or what is that new arena looking like?
Essentially getting a really high energy rating. So
what's that?
So in numbers wise, I think the current standards have just moved from 6 stars to 7 stars.
Okay.
And that takes into consideration a range of things. But essentially it's just basically sunlight, insulation, and air tightness.
Electricity.
That's right, yeah. Air tightness was another one on that. And that's essentially those things will break down that reading. We also take into consideration now solar panels, hot water heat pumps and things like that.
So if I have a home with a higher energy rating, that means that?
It's more comfortable, basically. There's a reading when we do blower doors on homes, and the industry standard with not sort of using any of these newer techniques somewhat sits around 15 air exchanges per hour. And that's classified as quite bad. And we really don't think condensation and things like that is managed properly. So we're trying to get our air exchanges to around 4 to 5 exchanges per hour. If we go any lower than that, which is passive house, you need to introduce heat recovery systems. So we're just having a bit of a balancing act with sometimes clients not wanting to go through that whole heat recovery system. We're trying to be a driver for it because it's basically air filtration. So your house is completely sealed from the outside, and then you have a filtration system introducing fresh air and filters. So extremely good with people with allergies and things like that. But also, just a cozy space that will last the test of time.
Keeps the house cooler in summer and warmer in winter. Naturally.
So going back to kind of Freedom Built, first version that we knew 3 years ago, and Freedom Built where you are today, again, massive growth and shift there. What has been some other big shifts that have occurred of late, and how does that then translate into what you guys are able to offer and how you're able to service your clientele?
I think basically bringing the team on now to execute our vision, and that's been with Maddie. That's been with our on-site team, which we've had for over 4 years now. And I feel like it's just having that in-house team and being able to service as much as we can. Like, we don't have to rely on other people. We have all of that built in-house.
So far more control on the projects and the outcome.
That's right. And there's just so many benefits that come with that for the clients, like reliability, the speed we build at. We don't have guys there like working on meter rates where they're trying to do it as quick as they can for as much money as they can. Like, we've got them in-house and they do it the Freedom way.
And they've all been trained by Mark, who is
I like
very
that.
meticulous. So
I like that. I do feel like when I follow you guys online and with projects, when you're doing like updates and stuff like that, your builds just, well, from my perception, they seem to move fast.
Yes,
They seem to really just keep moving, and it's not like, doesn't seem like much holds them up.
We've got a dual occupancy. We started in August last year, and funnily enough, I did a bit of a measure on everything the other day, and there was one day last week, and it was the first day that we didn't have a trade on site while we were waiting for someone else. So over a $2.5 million project, and I was just super proud to look back and be like, we've had something happening here every day, and it's just like, when Maddie came in, systems and processes.
I was going to say that
Like-
that's
Planning, and it's not through
Yeah.
rushing things either. It's
Yeah.
just being planned
better
and
plan.
prepared.
Yeah. Better
It's-
plan,
yeah.
better systems.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's an industry that can be often really overcomplicated, but when you just break it down simply and put simple processes and systems in place,
Yeah.
you can really, shine, I suppose.
That's
Yeah.
epic. That's Maddie bringing
That's
the
right.
gold. Love it. If we talk a little bit about, and you guys are big on family as well. I know we're now, you guys, coming together, working together, but you also help a lot of families as well. And that's been, epic to see. What's the, and you mentioned at the start of this conversation, one or two things there, and I was like, wow, you really understand your clientele. Again, shifting to focusing on the client, understanding the client.
Yeah.
Where does that level of detail and level of understanding come from, do you think?
I feel like it's from that early stages that I touched on before, where it was just seeing the disappointment of people. Like, there's often you speak to people and you ask them a question of, have you built before?
Yep.
And the answer's either, yes, I loved it, or I hated it, I'd never do it again.
Okay.
And
It's
that's,
often like their life savings going into this, or they're
Yeah.
putting themselves into, a mortgage. So
and I think
big
sometimes,
investment.
and we probably even catch ourselves out sometimes, but you really have to take that back and be like, this person is probably only ever going to make this large investment once, and you just want to try and make that the best experience for them as you can.
Yeah.
And you want them to be one of those people that were like, Freedom Built were amazing, we would do this again 10 times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. We're looking forward. Freedom Built. Maddie, starting with you. What are you guys most excited about when you look at the future?
Just excited about continuing on our upward trajectory.
Yeah.
Yeah, continuing growing.
But also
the
doing it
business.
together now.
Yeah.
Like, that's a huge one for me. Like,
Yeah.
it's really nice just to have my buddy by my side.
That's epic. I'm so excited for just hearing those little things there in terms of the gold, Maddie, that you've brought to the team now, and how the systems and stuff are evolving and getting even better.
Yeah.
So that what you provide is better. I'm looking forward to the case studies that come out of talking with your clients now in the future, and just hearing that, and just how you guys have built. You keep compounding those building blocks.
Yeah.
And seeing where those building blocks, when we look at, if looking back over the last 3-4 years is a telltale sign of what's to come, man, that's exciting.
And I think the best thing that we do for each other is, like, we really push each other. We're not people that stand still. Like, we'll be like, all right, come on, there's a Canberra half marathon this week. Like, let's go out and let's do it on a day's notice. And like, we do it. And then like, everyone's like, how do you guys operate like that? Like, but it's just.
And I also heard that in the final dash, Maddie took off.
Yeah, she did.
I peeped him out the post.
Yeah, the post. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll let her have that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. And we're trying to catch you this morning, Maddie, but you're just too quick out in front.
Some miles ahead.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. Anything before we sign off? Anything that you would want to share with other builders that, you were, if you look at yourself and where you were, 3.5 years ago, looking at us, working with us.
Yeah.
Do we, don't we?
Yeah.
What's some advice, feedback you'd give to those guys? And if you're going to recommend that they chat with us, what's the mindset they should bring?
I think everyone knows what the market's facing right now. And it goes with the old saying of, like, if you don't move with the market, you'll get left behind.
Yeah.
And everybody knows video content and all of these things is what's pushing people to the next level with things. And as the industry is going through what I would say as a lot of pressure right now, you need to be doing things to get in front of other people.
Yeah.
Obviously the lending is really hard to get right now, and the abundance of jobs isn't as good as it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So you need to put yourself in a position where you have some leverage and say, if there was a client that wanted to build a knockdown rebuild and there's 10 builders that specialize in that, how do you sit yourself in front of those guys? And if you're not doing anything, you're not going to be noticed. So it's about getting in front of these times. And it's hard because when things are looking quiet, it's hard to spend money. And marketing is like, it's quite hard to track your actual ROIs until stuff lands, and it doesn't always land for 6 to 12 months. That's right.
Yeah.
But you'll find most successful companies in these quieter times, they'll be putting 5-fold into their marketing systems, where other companies with a little bit of less experience, when things get tighter, the first thing they cut is probably their marketing, and that's the worst move they can make. So leaving on that, I feel like it is like you are feeling like it's a little bit of a gamble, but when you break those things down, you need to get in front of things. And if you want to be somewhere, you've got to get in the right place of get yourself in the right position to take it to the next level.
And just touching on that as well, I feel like it is a really hard time in the industry, and a lot of business owners would struggle mentally and stuff. And I would like really recommend that like other builders reach out to each other. Like even though you might be competitors, like that doesn't mean you can't network with each other and share knowledge and like share stories and be there for each other. So that's something that like Mark's got a crew of friends in Melbourne that are all builders, and like they've got a group chat and they chat about things and you know like get ideas off each other, and it's just, I think it's a really good way to network, which I feel like is not done enough in the residential building industry. Like I noticed it, like there was a lot of networking that I did in my previous role, but in the residential side, it's kind of all just, or you keep to yourself, you know, that's your competitor, you don't talk to your competitor.
And if you do ask how they're going, it's like, oh yeah, good, busy. Let's push past that. Love that, Maddie. And Mark, thanks for sharing what you shared there earlier. Big thank you for jumping on the podcast, and enjoy jumping into story development now.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.